Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world and you're joining us from. Welcome to Procurement Software.site's very first live demo of 2025. And I'm joined today by the only man in procurement tech that has my same hairstyle, Mr. Sam Jenks. Sam, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And I think that it's a hairstyle that most of us rock, not really by choice, I would say, but rather by fate. I'm happy to be here, James. Looking forward to digging into things.
Awesome. So for anyone that's watching this, we're just going to give everyone, as we always do, a couple of minutes to come on stream in case anyone's a minute or two late joining us. So for anyone that's watching this on LinkedIn, just pop in the comments where you're joining us from, just so as we can see where we've got some representation, because we are on the time zone here that hovers between Europe and North America. So hopefully we're going to get some participants from both sides of the pond. The way that this works, just to give a bit of housekeeping for anyone that's joining this for the first time, Sam will present a few slides, just giving a general overview of Kodiak Hub, first of all. And then after that, about 5-10 minutes in, we will jump into actually showing you under the hood of the demo. And you can see the platform in its full glory. If you have questions during the demo, pop them into the comments. If it's something that's relevant to the actual screen or area of the platform that Sam's presenting at that time, we will pop it up on the screen and we'll take that question. If it's anything that's a little bit more general, then we'll take that at the end. We did actually schedule an hour for this, but we usually try and get these done in about 45 minutes. So we're looking at sort of 5-10 minutes just to give you a general overview, then about 25 minutes, half an hour to give you a good feeling of what the platform looks like, and then we'll save the last 10 minutes for Q&A. So we've got Amsterdam, UK in the house. What's the weather like there? Where I am, it's hot as hell and it's 40 degrees Celsius today. So I'm glad I'm not in the UK.
That's just rude of you to even say, to be completely frank, when we're sitting in Stockholm, Sweden, and it's 6 degrees outside. So hey,
like
we can't all be James Dean.
Right? Not Celsius.
Wow. Yeah, exactly.
All righty. Exactly. Okay, Sam. So we're about 3 minutes in. So I think I'll hand over to you. So yeah, first of all, just give a quick intro of how you came into this space and your background, and then when you're ready, just give me the signal, and I'll flash up the slides that you want to present.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, James. Yeah, I mean, like I think plenty of people that work in the procurement or procure tech space, I kind of fell into it. I myself was actually the third hire at Kodiak Hub. I jumped on this journey back in 2016, turned into 2017, together with Malin Schmitz, our founder and our CEO. I was inspired by the journey that she was looking to take, and I really think that I bought into the fact that good technology can be able to make impact in various ways. And what a better way to be able to do it than in global supply chains, where, of course, procurement sourcing teams are managing huge volumes of spend that ultimately, lead to the products and services that in our homes, on our streets, and are an integral part of our lives. I think that procurement and sourcing doesn't always get necessarily the glory that they deserve. And our focus is to be able to put really good tooling in the hands of those individuals and make sure that, the SRM space is one that is well manned, and we are able to become the buyer's best friend forever. Really, that's our journey that we're trying to take. I'm going to get into the slides here. I assume that everybody can be able to see my screen, correct, James?
Yeah, it's up there now. Yeah, we're good to go.
Fantastic. I'm going to run through a quick deck, and then we're going to get into the demonstration. For those of you that don't know about us, that's totally fine, because we're going to take a step back and look at kind of Kodiak at a glance, talk a little bit more about the value journey that we're taking together with our customers. We're going to look into the platform itself, how, right? Really the meat and potatoes of our session. And then we're going to get into that live demonstration as well. But first, of course, we're going to quickly brag a little bit about the customers we're working with today. I know everybody wants a good logo slide, so we'll throw one of those up there as well. Let's get into things. Kodiak, like I said, founded back in 2016. That's when I joined the journey. Today, we're 75 plus strong. We're going to be about 100 at the end of the year. Our company spread out between Stockholm, Sweden, where we are headquartered. We also then have unit in the UK, DACH region, and we're making our expansion into North America this year as well, which is very, very exciting. Our solution, like I said, was founded by Malin Schmidt, and she founded this company like most tech entrepreneurs do. Once upon a time, she needed it. The fact is this still sits at the nucleus of our mission, is that we truly believe that SRM will take the exact same journey that CRM took 20 years ago. Malin was fed up with seeing people running around like myself, sales and marketing professionals with our glossy CRM solutions, and then sitting on the other side of the business and wondering, why in the heck does procurement, sourcing, quality, sustainability teams not have access to these same insights that sales and marketing have had for years and years? We truly believe that procurement has an abundance of information and data, but as a lot of the teams that we talk to, they're starved for knowledge. They want those actionable insights, and that's what we're helping them to be able to capture, not only to manage their information, data, and documentation of their supplier base, but also to be able to put that into action as well. We have a sweet spot, and this means, of course, that is not necessarily, if you're not in this sweet spot, we don't work with you, but we primarily, about 75% of our customer base is managing direct materials. We work in, typically with customers that have global and complex supply chains where quality and sustainability is critical to their business. We also are looking to work with businesses, of course, that have, a complexity when it comes to their data and are trying to turn, again, that information into intelligence. And also those businesses that are not just looking to manage risk, but are really trying to create more resilient supply chains together with their suppliers. Our focus really is to be able to take a journey with our customers. It's all too often that we hear from our customers that, they're sitting in this bottom left-hand corner of making, kind of fighting fires, managing risk, trying to create cost savings. Ultimately, our focus is to be able to take a journey, helping our clients to be able to reposition themselves and save time and automate the boring things, the things that are menial and manual and otherwise taking a lot of time, ultimately so they can be able to spot opportunities in their supplier base, giving them more time for strategic sourcing. And we really believe that SRM is one of the main kind of levers that businesses can be able to pull to be able to enhance their strategic sourcing. And we'll hopefully show that in the presentation once we get into the demonstration here as well. How are we going to get there? Well, not just by talking about it, of course. There's good technology at the core. The solution itself is, as you see here on screen, a modular one. This allows our customers to pick and choose the modules as they see fit. It's a box of chocolates, really, for them to be able to utilize and build their own modular suite. When it comes down to it, this modular overview is really broken down, I would say, more distinctly into 3 pillars when it comes to kind of the end user value. The baseline functionality, which you see in the middle of the screen, this is kind of your classic supplier information, data, document management capabilities. That's where you can store, of course, compliance, documentation, contracts, so forth and so on. This is also then where we host an action in the collaboration space to be able to manage corrective actions, nonconformities, improvement proposals, but also just simple communication between buyer and supplier. It can also be utilized to manage different types of workflows internally, which we've seen a lot of our customers utilizing it for. And then, of course, they have the reporting capabilities that sit in the hub as well. If you're capturing a lot of data and documentation, your vendor base, of course, you want to be able to make sense of that. And our dashboarding capabilities helps our customers to do so. The rest of the capabilities are really broken down into 2 main distinct pillars, as you see here. Left-hand side of the screen, this is where we are having our preferred vendors for third-party risk. These particular solutions are natively integrated into our interface. So based upon simple data inputs like a country name, or for example, a business name or a VAT or company registration number, the supplier directly has a risk profile. Again, these are our preferred vendors that are licensed via us. With that being said, we have a BYOL methodology, which means bring your own license, right? If you already have a Dun & Bradstreet or a Credit Safe or an EcoVadis or an Integrity Next, a Moody's, right, that you want to be able to integrate into our scorecards, perfectly fine. We already have out of the box integrations with the majority of those third-party risk solutions out there. The right-hand side of the screen is where we're orchestrating processes, right? So of course, we've automated the risk screening. Now it's time to be able to manage the life cycle of the supplier. From the beginning of the relationship to the in-life cycle management, that's where these particular modules come in. We're trying to streamline processes as much as possible, again, from the moment of intake all the way through to onboarding, on-site audits, as well as then through to performance evaluation as well. Capturing data from various touch points along the way and various stakeholders. There's dynamic interfaces, of course, for suppliers or auditors or internal stakeholders to be able to communicate and collaborate and share their insights during these different activities. The one thing that you're going to see within the demonstration as well is that at the core of these particular modules sits a rating methodology. That rating methodology is then completely configurable based upon our customers' KPIs and their kind of how would I say, approval criteria for what excellent and what poor looks like as well. So of course, that is a benefit of our customers to be able to quickly spot the risks and the opportunities of their supplier base, not just having data sitting around that is dead data. The other thing to note here is that our solution also hosts a best practice library, which is out of the box. So when it comes to, for example, SAQs or self-assessment questionnaires surrounding, for example, the wave of legislation that everybody has coming at them, LKSG, CSDDD, CSRD, EUDR, you name it, some type of acronym you could be able to come up with. There's some type of legislation that's out there at this moment. And of course, our solution has a lot of out-of-the-box content that customers can take advantage of, but also they can be able to configure to their own need. I think that that's a nice transition into our kind of brag slide, so to say. The reason I'm showing this is not just to say we work with great customers, which of course we do, but to show the types of industries that we're working within, everything from deep process industry, food and beverage, to construction, to packaging, to mining and metals, energy, infrastructure, luxury goods, you name it. We have a lot of different companies that we're working with out there and a lot of different use cases. Why? Is because, of course, SRM in our world is going to take the exact same journey that CRM took, which means that procurement needs good tooling. So I'd love to be able to get into the demonstration, but I'll pause for a second. James, has there come in any questions in the chat that are of interest?
No, there haven't. So if anyone does have a quick question on the overview of those slides that you presented, Sam, then yeah, just pop those in the comments now and we'll pick them up. If not, then we'll move on to the demo. I actually think I saw a demo. I first saw a demo of this, I think about 3 years ago, just before we did the podcast, the first podcast that we did together, around about this same time in 2022. It's come a long way since then, hasn't it? It really has.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our headcount has almost doubled every single year since then. The investments in the product are 60 to 70% of our revenue stream. I mean, we really are product focused, and I think that it shows when our customers give us reviews on Capterra and the like. We're really trying to just build, a solution that is easy to use and really is going to be able to drive, like we said, those actionable insights for our customers. But it's nice to hear that you think that it's come further, because you haven't even seen the demo now, James. So let's get into the real stuff then. All right.
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. I'm going to, sorry about that, show my screen here. Can you see my screen again?
Yeah.
Super. Sorry that I gave a little bit of a view of the StreamYard behind the scenes there. That was not the intention, James. I think people are going to live.
My tech stack is not a secret.
No, exactly. Fantastic. Nor is ours, right? We're using Outlook. We're a Microsoft company. No, but let's get into things. Welcome to the platform, everybody. Cloud-based, online. Our solution is hosted in Dublin, Ireland. Our solution here that we're looking at is the login page. Once we've logged in, we can be able to see our vendors around the world. We can be able to quickly get an understanding of our vendors and also the potential macro risks that are associated with those vendors. As you see, there's filters that you can be able to toggle on or off. Those filters exist around the solution, and we'll get back into that later. There's also an additional overlay to any type of country risk that you can be able to see. That country risk is made up of 40 different internationally recognized indices. things like the ILO, World Bank, Fitch Ratings, UN. There's various indices that are pulling into 8 different areas, covering then financial, geopolitical, environmental, and social risk in a country as well. So it gives you a snapshot of the context that you're potentially sourcing within. Again, that overlay of disasters, you can be able to toggle on or toggle off as you see. So you can be able to directly see a feed here of any type of global disasters and climate alerts. This is then feeding in directly from GDACS directly into our platform. So again, you could be able to set up notifications if it's in the country where you have a supplier located, set the business continuity, a plan into place if necessary, so forth and so on. What we see here is that there is many small dots here on the on this map overview. These are then individual suppliers, and directly from this view, you can also dive directly into a supplier scorecard as well. We're going to, of course, loop back to the scorecard, as this is really, I would say, kind of the control tower for an individual vendor. And I want to make sure that we demo in this properly, as this is where a lot of the insights lie for an individual vendor. But first, I wanted to take a quick step back and give a little bit of an orientation to the platform, and also kind of put myself in the driver's seat, so to say, of a strategic buyer, category manager, supplier quality manager, somebody that would be utilizing our solution to be able to manage their vendor base as well. So the module, as you see here above, or the tabs that you see here above, are broken down into 3 distinct areas. Insights, that's where you're going to be able to see your supplier data. You can be able to have vendor lists. You can be able to add new vendors, import data, export data. This is also, of course, if you're hooked up with your ERP, as the majority of our customers do, you would be able to push and pull the vendor master data between. And this is also then where you can dive into those vendor scorecards as well, which we're going to show off some of the features here in just a moment. Impact is where you're going to, again, impact the relationship. This is where you're going to be able to build up templates for your assessments or audit checklists or performance evaluations. It's where you can be able to run campaigns. Campaigns is our language for really kind of scheduled sendouts and drip campaigns, automated flows, so that your vendors can be able to fill out onboarding or self-assessment activities in the dynamic portals that they're provided with, that your auditors can be able to fill out those audit checklists, or internal stakeholders, the evaluations. There's also then an action space. This action space I mentioned before is where you could be able to manage comms, both internally, but of course, absolutely externally between buyer and supplier. You could be able to manage different types of corrective actions there, so forth and so on. Everything that is then captured in assessments, audits, and evaluations is reposited in the supplier scorecard, so you can be able to get a good view of those things. Same thing with the actions. So of course, you have an audit trail of any type of communication you've had with your vendors, which we'll get into in just a moment. The last piece is intelligence. Of course, when you're capturing a lot of data and documentation from your vendors, various stakeholders, or your existing tech stack, then of course you want to be able to visualize those things. That's what our intelligence capability is for dashboarding and reporting as well. And we can show that off as a kind of end to the demo today in that case. So let's get into things. That's an
interesting one, Sam, actually, before you move on to the next one. So that's actually with the supplier audit and the supplier assessment features. If you have supplier quality engineers or supplier development engineers, they can fully use this as well. They kind of, I mean, they need a separate system for like specific manufacturing quality related stuff, but
yeah,
for supplier audits and for supplier assessments, they can do everything in here.
Yeah, correct. And I would say that, like, we talk about it internally as kind of our holy trinity whenever we're speaking to an organization that's looking for alignment between procurement, quality, and sustainability, which so many manufacturing organizations are. That's where our solution really shines. And I think that it's back to the fact that we're looking to work with businesses that have global and complex supply chains where quality and sustainability matters, right? So absolutely, those are definitely stakeholders involved.
Sorry, I interrupted your flow. Carry on.
Please interrupt. Are you looking for a sales job? Because we're hiring as well. So, I mean, you're picking up on these things so quickly, James. All right, let's get into it. The Insights tab, as you see here, is where I'm going to be able to see my supplier list overview. Here, for example, I could be able to quickly toggle to an already pre-saved list. Say, for example, I want to be able to quickly get a view of all of my strategic vendors. Well, then I can have that as a pre-saved list with, for example, all of my strategic vendors there available to me. This is then, for example, where a category manager that I'm sitting myself in the seat of might have the ability to be able to pre-save a list that is my category of vendors so that I can always come into that particular view as my default in that case. The vendor list, as you see here, you can be able to manipulate what the data is that you're seeing. You can, of course, be able to look at things, in a view that you would like to. You can quickly, as you see, look like top to bottom of a particular row, whether that's like the spend data or the rating of vendors. You can be able to just view particular vendors based upon their overall rating. The rating we're going to get back to on kind of how this health score is built up for a particular supplier, but it's really a 360 based upon their country risk, their performance, and their actual compliance level as well of the things that you guys are digging into. Here, for example, as well, if you would like to, you can always be able to utilize on the left-hand side of the screen different types of filters. You can, of course, build out so that you can have, as you see here, your category tree and those different subcategories built into the platform. You can apply those particular filters. From here, you can continue to, as you see, just build up on those particular filters to say, I want to be able to see my vendors in that sub-segment category, but also in this particular view of strategic and bottleneck vendors. We can, of course, also set up automated segmentation. So based upon, for example, particular characteristics of a vendor, then you can directly automate the segmentation of those vendors if you're utilizing like a Kralik matrix or something of that sort as well. What we see here is that you can also just quickly search for an individual vendor as you would like to. And then from here, again, you can jump into that vendor scorecard as well. To get data into the platform, as we mentioned before, you can import or export data via spreadsheets. You can also just quickly add vendors into the platform, for example, via the capabilities here, which is then the ability to be able to input. So say that I'm a person that's trying to input a new vendor. I would then need to input here 4 data points. Could just be able to input the address that I'm located at our headquarters. And then we see here, for example, it populates with the last required data point. 4 required data points: the supplier ID, the supplier name, the supplier contact email, and then the country. With those simple 4 data inputs, you're able to then add a supplier into the system. As you saw, you can also be able to auto-generate that particular supplier ID or vendor ID. And now that that data is in the system, I can, of course, be able to reach out to that vendor, ask them to be able to complete the onboarding or self-assessment activities that I have. So then, of course, they can be able to fill out the rest of the data that I'm requiring of them, right? Their bank details, tax information, different types of compliance levels, whatever that might be to, right? If it's, I'm digging into health and safety or environmental or quality, so forth and so on, right? When it comes to another way to be able to get data into the platform, we have a feature called sign up. This particular feature is that you can be able to get a kind of down and dirty link that you can send to a vendor. Or for example, you could also be able to utilize this as something that's a little bit more robust sitting in your intranet, or for example, your external website. I don't know if that's called extranet or not. I was on the brink of making up a word there, which sounded very 1995. So let's say then you can host it on your website, right? This particular form you can be able to have visualized again for vendors to be able to come to you and fill out as a pending vendor. So the fantastic thing is, of course, you could be able to always have a registry of potential pending vendors, right? Work with us. And then you also have all of the data and documentation that they've shared with you in this particular form. You can also utilize this to be able to make sure that all internal requests are flowing via the procurement organization, right? So the, internal stakeholder fills out that, this is a business that's manufacturing electronics. Well, good. Based upon those data properties, this data will then flow into the pending approval vendors, and maybe then an internal stakeholder that's responsible for that area will get pinged about this particular input from the vendor, or for example, from the internal stakeholder again as well. The beautiful thing is that directly via the input here, you can also be able to directly automate a send out of an onboarding or a self-assessment to that vendor as well. So now that we have our data in the platform, it's time to, of course, start working with the data. we can be able to get a quick overview of kind of the, how would I say, end state, because of course we're pressed for time on this particular demonstration. I want to be able to show you guys, of course, what are the features that a lot of our customers are spending a lot of time in, and that is absolutely the supplier scorecard. So when we have, of course, a full supplier scorecard, then we can be able to see all of the data properties associated with that vendor. I could be able to, if I would like to, just quickly search for data. Say that I want to find spend data, I can do so. Say that, for example, I want to find their IBAN number, well, then I can be able to search for that, right? As you see here, all of these data properties sit underneath the vendor scorecard, and I, as the user that had the user rights to be able to do so, can also be able to update or edit these particular data properties as well. So this is then any data that's being shared with us via, for example, the onboarding or the self-assessment questionnaires that vendors are able to provide back to you guys. Again, properties are things that are more static data. They can, of course, change, meaning though that they're not really saying whether the vendor is good or bad. They just are in that case. The data as well that you see on the left-hand side here, this is really kind of, is a vendor good or bad? This is what we say here is the global rating that these particular 4 pillars are making up. This is then consisting of 3 different areas, which is then the safe source rating. We talked about that on the world map. This is then the 8 different areas, again, as I mentioned before: social, environmental, geopolitical, and financial risk in a particular country. It gives us a snapshot of the context that we're sourcing within. Say that, for example, there's particular risk in one of these areas, whatever it might be, well, then we might dig deeper in our self-assessment. Say that, for example, otherwise there's stability, well, then good, then maybe we might search for opportunities to source from that particular country in that case. Again, it gives us a context in which we're sourcing within. The sustainable practices, this is in fact where the responses are coming back in. I mentioned it when we were in the conceptual part of the demonstration. We're not just looking to help our customers capture data and documentation. That data and documentation is being turned around into actionable insights. So once vendors or audits or assessments or audits are rolling back in to our customers, then it's predefined based upon their acceptance criteria for what excellent and poor looks like, the KPIs that are most important to them, and directly fed into the rating methodology, giving our customers a snapshot of where they maybe should be focusing a little bit more, or maybe where the vendor is doing just fine. Underneath these individual areas, you can be able to dive in and, of course, always see what the rating or weighting or value of that response is associated with this particular vendor. And the other thing that you can be able to do here is, of course, whenever there's documentation associated with this, well, that's been reposited within the scorecard. You can always be able to go down and quickly find that documentation. Here, all documents that is shared with you is going to be directly embedded underneath that scorecard. You can search for it via name. You can be able to search for it via category or document type. You can also be able to, of course, search for it via the expiry date here as well. The supplier is able to upload documentation in their interfaces, which I think we might have the time to be able to show. And you also, as the user, are, of course, able to upload documentation. So you can be able to upload your NDAs or your contracts you have with this vendor. You can also be able to, as you see here, utilize this particular feature for signing. So we have a hookup directly for DocuSign. So you can be able to integrate that. So you can, of course, send documents for signing via the platform as well. And then once they're signed, then they will land directly in the scorecard as well. Very nice, of course, for NDAs getting signed off quickly and making sure that everything's reposited in the same place, right?
That's interesting. So you could use that as a basic contracts database with an approval and signature feature in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of our customers do that. And of course, I mean, we're not a sourcing solution, but I think together with the capabilities that are kind of in our self-assessment, as well as in the action space, and then the contract repository and signing capabilities, then some of our customers are utilizing it for strategic sourcing in that perspective, or strategic sourcing events as well. But again, that's not really our space, but absolutely could be utilized for that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these with these contract management solutions that, and unless your legal team want it for things like redlining and contract libraries and that type of thing, I always think with contract management, and this is kind of my philosophy on this and where I think this will go, I think contract management and supplier relationship management or vendor lifecycle management, whatever you want to call it, I think they're kind of going to merge, because from a procurement standpoint, your job as a category manager or as a sourcing manager is going to be more in line with post-signature contract management, which is essentially SRM, right? So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just in the same way, a CRM is utilized for everything that's leading up to contract and sale, and then the after life cycle maintenance. I think it's very similar within an SRM platform. That's where I think we're going to see, and I totally agree with you, that there is going to be a convergence of those two spaces in certain aspects for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just talking about the last pillar underneath here, performance. This is where you can be able to capture both really quantitative hard data that can feed into KPI areas that are important to you around a vendor, but you can also capture soft or qualitative data, experience data from your team as well about that vendor's overall performance. As you see here, each of these individual areas you can again dive deeper into. Those particular areas you can not only be able to see a snapshot of, but you can also be able to see historical progression over time. Obviously, this is some dummy data in here, but you recognize, of course, how when you're then being able to take snapshots of performance evaluations over time, you could be able to see trends in the overall performance that this vendor is doing. Again, our focus here is to try and build a 360, right? It's giving us the opportunity to not only be able to see how a vendor is doing now, but also how they're progressing over time. It's giving us a balanced view of their risk profile, their performance profile, their compliance and due diligence profile, all in one place, in the same space that there's also a lot of other capabilities, such as the third-party risk, notes, actions, and the like. So I wanted to transition to a few of those things. We mentioned it before. We have licensed third-party partners that are directly in our interface, natively integrated. Mode Finance is the vendor that we utilize for financials. Again, though, you can also be able to bring your own license with another vendor that you might be using, like Dun & Bradstreet or CreditSafe or alike. We have plenty of customers that have those today. This is then based upon a simple data input of a VAT or company registration number. So say you don't have this particular data input, the vendor provides it in the onboarding form. Directly, they are configured with a financial result. What you also see here is then the ability to be able to scale the web to be able to get a little bit of insights of any type of information that's out there. What you see here is that we put input, for example, a name simply of a business, and then we're able to get back results. What we also see here is that the trade trust features, which you can be able to scroll all the way down to the page, this is sanctions, politically exposed persons, and this is also then giving you a snapshot of any type of reputational risk that might be linked back to a business you're working with. And of course, it gives you a little bit of basic information about that business, but also the sources of where this particular business has popped up, all the way down to the special interest persons or politically exposed persons themselves. So you can be able to, of course, do a quick deep dive on these individuals and see, what is it that they've been popping up in media about? Is it actually a reputational risk to my business to work with these vendors? Of course, this isn't something that you leave your head at home. You need to, of course, be able to have that human intelligence on top of course, the capabilities of the tool as well. But this is giving that kind of view of things all in one. There's some simple collaboration capabilities here. Of course, you can leave a note. As you see here, for example, I left a note earlier. I figured I liked in your intro that you mentioned that we have the same haircut. So I figured that I would do a little callback there. And one thing that you have, of course, around the solution as well that I haven't yet mentioned is notification capabilities. This can guide users and kind of their workflows, but it also can be able to just give you an understanding of like different types of updates. So for example, you see 1 hour ago, there was a new note added that, this particular user made a note on this particular supplier scorecard. I directly here can jump into this scorecard. I can also mark that as a red note. This notification capabilities are really robust. It's also allowing us to be able to see, like, has a vendor data point updated? Has, for example, their rating dropped or went up? Has a document expired or is it going to expire? Also, as well, then like approval level or flagging, right? The applications are pretty vast of this capabilities within our notification builder. And it's both, of course, in-app, but you can also always have all those notifications rolling through to you, of course, in your email as well. So you can be able to have a mix of both of those particular items as well. Let's get back to the scorecard. The only last things that I wanted to be able to show in the scorecard were then the prior self-assessments, audit and evaluations. They all sit housed underneath this particular supplier. So I have then that historical view. I can dive into those individual reports if I would like to as well. Then I also have all of the actions as well as then the products and services linked back to this vendor if I had that particular data scope. The actions that you see here is then any type of communication or collaboration I have ongoing. So again, say that I'm a person that's working with this particular vendor and trying to be able to manage a corrective action plan or an improvement proposal. Well, then I could be able to do so directly in the same interface. All of the communication that's happening back and forth, all the documentation that's being shared, it's all reposited. So I'm not having to jump between different interfaces, different systems, download, upload things. It's all being housed in one place. What we see here is that the action capability allows you to be able to communicate directly with the vendor. This then gives them a link that they can access via their email. So it's a one-time encoded portal that they can be able to enter into via that link that's provided for them. As you see here, you and the vendor can be able to communicate back and forth. You have pretty much a professional instant messenger, right? You guys can be able to, of course, request documents as well as then you can share documents with the vendor. They can do the same in that perspective. As you see here, you can also be able to build up a light approval flow and determine who are the stakeholders that are going to be involved within this particular action. So you can make it a multi-stakeholder activity, of course, internally, but also externally. You can also then have, as you see here, different sub-actions that are things that you or the vendor might need to be working through. And of course, very important, an action log, giving a history of what's happened, or also then giving a background of the things that have occurred. Of course, very important when audit season comes around and everybody comes knocking and saying, you know, do you guys have, of course, some type of evidence that you have in fact put these different activities into place with a vendor that you said you need to be able to put into place as well. That was a pretty thorough overview of the scorecard, right? How we get there, of course, is the modules that are within the self-assessments, audits, and performance evaluations. And of course, then there's capabilities in the intelligence to be able to do a broader overview. I'm curious, James, before I continue on with the demo, how much more time do we have so I can be able to determine maybe just one last or two last features to show?
Yes, Sam. So if we could wrap up the demo in about 5 minutes, just to give everyone a couple of minutes to ask questions, that would be awesome.
Super. Yeah, so let's walk through the life of, again, the person that's input that non-approved vendor that I input before, right? SAM supplier. This particular vendor, I might want to be able to send out an onboarding or a self-assessment to, right? Some type of activity. We'll take that as the example. All I need to do is be able to toggle over, as you see here, to the assessment space. Assessments, audits, and performance evaluations, like I mentioned before, are all broken down to the same flow for the user. I'm able to build templates. These could be super generic. They could also be super specific, right? They could be, really detailed to a category or a type of vendor. They could also, again, like I said, just be kind of a generic overview or onboarding of your vendors as well. When it comes down to it, you can host various, as you see here, templates. Those templates you can be able to have as active, or you can draft them. I'm not going to go into the builder, but it's a very simple drag and drop builder. You can utilize your own configured content, or for example, stuff from our global library that we have as an offering to our customers as well. The campaign feature, this is then where I would say, okay, SAM supplier, I want to be able to send you an onboarding. You're a manufacturing vendor, so I'll add you into this ongoing campaign. And then I could be able to, as you see here, quickly search for that vendor. I could have searched for them, as you see here, also based upon the various different types of data tags that I have associated or filters. I then would be able to here, add one vendor, schedule this out. I could be able to say, I want the first one to roll out now. I want the next one to be able to roll out next week. And then the final call, it will just say it'll be the day afterwards. You see that the solution was updating that for us along the way. All I need to do is directly press schedule, and that's flying out the door to that vendor. I could, again, as I mentioned before, also utilize the direct feed between the input of this particular data form, and then it's directly automating that send out to that vendor as well. What do I see here? Well, along the way, if I then quickly open up a campaign that has a little bit more robust results, I'm able to see which vendors have opened, started, clicked, and or also responded. And I can be able to see individually which vendors are doing so or not. I can also be able to, as you see here, view the status of that assessment or onboarding activity while they're in it live. What we see here is that I've also already sent myself a vendor onboarding or self-assessments prior. This is the way that the vendor accesses it. Email, it looks and feels like it's coming from you. We are able to, of course, configure these things. It will not have support at Kodiak. It would be, of course, the sender email from the customer. As you see here, you can input placeholders. So, of course, then the engagement level is higher. What we also can be able to see is that it is very simple for the vendor to be able to enter in via the link or the button that you provide them with in that email that you built up in the template. Here, then the vendor can be able to get some background that you've built into this landing page. They can directly then begin that particular assessment. What we see here is that that vendor is going to see all the data they already have on file. They'll also be able to provide you with new data that you're asking for, whatever that might be. As we also see, then you can be able to, as the vendor here, toggle between the different sections. These sections then will have questions designated. Some of those questions will have requests for documentation or expiry dates. That's up to the customer utilizing the solution to determine. And as you see, then you can also be able to set up conditionality. So yes, will then give us the documents. No, well then there might be a follow-up with other types of questions that are asked to you. This vendor is able to work through this. It's auto-save. It's online. So of course, if they leave this particular view, then they can be able to come back and everything's saved. They can be able to share that link internally to cycle it, of course, to the different stakeholders that are important to respond back to this as well. And you can be able to work in it multi-stakeholders at the same time. If we go back into the platform very quickly, what's the results? Well, you're able to get back reports. This is then where you're able to see an overview of those things that are rolling back in. You can quickly, as you see here, also see when a vendor has a risk profile. Why is that the case? Well, you can be able to see the ring directly around it. These are the things that you can be able to directly be notified about. Again, that the status has changed, for example, to green to red, or that an area of a particular area has been too low or below your acceptance criteria. You can, of course, dive deeper into these reports individually, just in the same way that you can be able to dive into the data in the supplier scorecard. This is just kind of that individual review of the supplier's response as well. And here you start seeing the rating methodology shining through, as well as then also the capabilities to flag vendors, so forth and so on. And of course, this goes back to the kind of control tower, right? This is where we're going to then be able to set into action, some type of corrective action for that vendor, or work with them to be able to improve upon what it is that they have, maybe missed out or not provided us with in the initial assessment. So it's utilized for qualification, approval, as well as then the in-lifecycle management after that. Of course, those particular modules surrounding auditing, performance evaluation, as well as the reporting, we don't have much more time to be able to demonstrate, but we're happy to be able to dig into those things on an individual demo if it's of interest for anybody as well. So just feel free to reach out and get in touch, and one of our very talented specialists in the SRM space will be able to be with you. They're, of course, going to advise you and see if our solution is in fact a fit more so than anything. That's all I have, James.
Fantastic, Sam. Thank you. And as you say, for anything that's as comprehensive as this, with 45 minutes, we can only really scratch the surface. But certainly, as I was watching along, it's very full stack now, isn't it, in terms of what it can do? So, yeah. Especially as you said, I don't know what the exact stat that you gave was, 70-80% of your customers are manufacturing companies. And that sort of speaks to me as well, as someone who historically, when I worked in procurement, let me just get rid of the slides.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
When I was in my corporate procurement role, I'd always worked in manufacturing businesses in both the direct side and the indirect side. And I can see on both sides of the coin, whether you're managing raw materials or whether you're managing indirect spend, both could be perfectly well managed within the same platform, even though, obviously it's got the features that make it that killer app for manufacture, for direct spend too. So before we close out, so anyone in the audience, if you have a question for Sam and you want to ask anything related to Kodiak Hub, both in terms of the demo that you've seen, or maybe something completely out of left field that Sam didn't cover. Obviously, it's going to be difficult to discuss pricing because, as you said, it's a modular structure. So it's going to be dependent, I guess, on on the specific recipe that the individual customer wants. Do you
Correct, yeah.
price it per seat, or is it unlimited users, sort of enterprise pricing? What's your general philosophy on how you price it?
Per user, modules in scope, and then the number of suppliers that are going to be managed. So those are the three data points that are required to be able to understand what it is that the scope.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Richard, who is also part of Kodiak's team, has put the link in the comments. If anyone does want to touch base with the guys from Kodiak Hub and book a more detailed demo, that is in the show notes. For anyone that wasn't able to catch this, or maybe you want to show this to your boss or your center of excellence team, this video has also been live streamed to YouTube, and you can go in and watch that anytime. If you just type in the procurement software channel on YouTube, you can go in and watch this demo at any time, because it will be saved on there too. So it's there for posterity if you do want to show it any of your colleagues and get buy-in from your stakeholders before you book a more detailed demo with the guys from Kodiak Hub. Sam, there's nothing that's come in, so yeah, you've obviously done a good job in answering everyone's questions. Either
an absolutely terrible one, right? It's been absolute nonsense. Maybe otherwise, who knows?
I was thinking, yeah, either that or the connection dropped halfway through and no one told us.
Right, exactly. I sure hope that's not the case. But otherwise, then it was a cozy moment with you, if that was the case, then at least, James, right? We got a moment to be able to chat.
I can still see the counter. It's still ticking off that we're live. So no, it's all good.
All right. Fantastic. I see actually that a question
we have had a quick question come in from Bizwadget. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Let me just flash that up. So, hi Sam, tool looks great. How do you perform supplier audits for the health score?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Dr. Singh. The supplier audit capabilities can either be utilized by a third-party auditor or, for example, by the business that is in fact, of course, utilizing the platform from a procurement perspective. With that being said, the audit checklists can be configured. They can also be utilized, for example, from our content library, where we already have a lot of out-of-the-box checklists to be able to provide. The kind of acceptance criteria, again, for what excellent and what poor looks like, say, for example, that you're looking at the levels of implementation of their health and safety measures on site, right, when you're going out for an audit. And it's a code of conduct audit of some sort. You can, of course, be able to fill in those questions, and it's going to be set up based upon, kind of what you thought excellent looks like, what you think poor looks like. So you're able to determine those criteria as well as the response values in the audit. The other thing is that it's a mobile app that you could be able to use, or desktop, but there is a mobile app that is configurable. And there, then you can be able to take pictures, you can be able to leave comments, mark nonconformity. So then when the audit report rolls back in, it's matching against the self-assessment, which is very, very nice, because it allows then, of course, the supplier's response not to be the only response, but instead it's overridden by the objective evidence that's seen out on site, which makes it, of course, something that's loved by both procurement and quality teams, because it's all too often that audits are, a spend, a cost center that you don't get real value out of, right? Those reports sit there, nobody puts them into use. That's what we're trying to change, of course.
Okay, I hope that answers that one. And then, is it physical audits or is it system driven?
You could do desktop audits. You could desktop audits, or, for example, on site. With that being said, like, we don't audit the vendors, if that's what where the question is coming from. Just so we're clear.
Yeah, it's not a third party audit service. That's you're a software company. Yeah,
the engine for those audits if needed.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all from us. We can round off there. Just a quick reminder that if you want to see everyone that's out there in the procurement tech space, we have tech maps where we've mapped out the complete procurement technology market, depending on whether you're looking at technology for small, medium-sized enterprises, for the mid-market, or for enterprise. Just go to store.procurementsoftware.site and you can download all of those completely for free with a full print size PDF file. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure, and we'll be back actually in 2 weeks' time, I think it is, with our next one, which is Productica. They are a contract solution that enables you to pull all of the metadata out of your contracts and to be able to put that in one simple desktop or spreadsheet to be able to get all of your important contract data in one simple to use sheet. So look out for that one. We'll be posting the links and the registration for that probably tomorrow, and hopefully see you next time. Sam, it's been a pleasure, always is. Any final messages before we close out?
Pleasure's all mine. Nice hair. How about that?
There we go.
Have a good rest of your day,
Okay,
James.
take
Thanks
care,
a lot.
everyone. All the best.